Okay. Okay, Mahan.
Testing.
Okay, good evening. Is this really on? We're on TV, that's right. I guess
We can't see ourselves, so maybe that's a good thing.
that's a good thing. Okay. Are you sure this is on? Can you all hear me? Okay. Unfortunately. Good evening. Good to see all of you as we begin to wind down this series that I think all of us have enjoyed. When our children were little, Judy and I were getting ready to leave one evening to go out for probably a church function, no doubt. And Amy was about 5 years old, and we were waiting for the babysitter. And she said, "You know, I like them when they're people, but not when they're babysitters." Well, that used to be my opinion about doctors. I liked them when they were people, and that's still my opinion about doctors. I like them when they're people, but not when they're doctors, except for Dr. Shane Kelley, and of course, Dr. Larry Husky. I never had the chance to have Dr. Cloud as my doctor. Where is Dr. Cloud? Where'd he go? Okay, he better. But truly, when Larry retired, I thought, well, I think I'll just find a different doctor. And I thought about Dr. Mark Cloud. I thought, well, they're probably full. I'll try this guy. I'll give him a chance to be my doctor. And of course, he was thrilled when he learned that he was. Is that right?
I think was it a 50 I had to leave on the exam room floor the first time, make sure you came back? Was that right?
That
was part of the tithe. Yeah,
that's what it was. So anyway, I
it was
decided to
expensive.
stay with Dr. Shane Kelley, and of course I've been very pleased since then. All the speakers we've had up until now, except for one, I have known. I invited them because I knew them and I knew their work and their faith. But one of them, I had to trust someone else, and it worked out very well. But of course, I know Shane Kelley, and he knows me better probably than any of you. Inside and out, he knows me. So I was excited when he eagerly accepted this invitation tonight to be with us and talk about his faith and his work and how those two intersect with one another. So I want to begin by just asking you, Shane, if you'll talk a little bit about where you've come from, how you came to be a doctor, and move on with your faith journey.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, thank you all for being here to listen to me talk and just give a little testimony about how I am here. And thank you, Jim, for inviting me. I greatly appreciate it. So I can give you the Cliff's Notes version because otherwise we probably would be here all night. So originally I was born and raised in Jefferson City, Tennessee, not too far from here. Grew up there and stayed there till I graduated high school. So I was a Patriot. Graduated in 1998 and decided to go to the University of Tennessee. Started school there, found my way into business, felt like it was the right thing to do. Completed my training there, and my concentration was in logistics and transportation, and so I made the decision to take a job with an automotive company up in Michigan. At 23, they offered me a lot of money, and I thought that was where I needed to be putting my faith, so to speak, which was not correct. Now, the funny thing about that is during that time, my mother actually became sick with breast cancer. And so I'd accepted this job and was getting ready to move, and we got just kind of blindsided by this terrible diagnosis, and her breast cancer was very aggressive, and so we started spending a lot of time at the hospital. And I was like, I don't want to be in the hospital. Why am I here? I'm here for my mother, but wasn't necessarily something I was thinking about. But as I saw the nurses and the doctors just all caring so much and being willing, even if it was just a hug, the things that they would do, it just really started to work on me. And I think that was the beginning of the Lord telling me what I really was meant to do. And so I went up to Michigan, and I stayed there for about a year and a half. And I really just knew about 2 to 3 months into it that I'd made a terrible mistake. But when you're that young and I'd gotten out of school, I wasn't supposed to have to go to any more school. And so I was happy about not having to worry about it. I'm like, oh, and you got money. And they say, I'd never had money before. Hey, this is nice. So you have these things, and then you're going, but that's not really where I feel like I'm supposed to be. And there was a very wonderful church up there off of 19th and Shaner up in Sterling Heights, Michigan, that I was attending, and had made some friends there. And just in talks with them, they would all just, one by one say, you're probably not supposed to be doing this. Just so you know, God's talking to you. He's working on you. And so I stayed up there about a year and a half, and really had a freak out moment, probably 3 months before I decided to leave, where I was like, I've gone through all this and done all this, but this is not where I'm supposed to be. And in the meantime, my mother had, fortunately, her cancer was in remission, so she was in good health, and I just felt like it was the right time to maybe pay that forward for all the things that I'd watched and the excellent care that she received through UT Medical Center. And so I made the decision to come back. And so I came back to Knoxville. And the second freak out moment I've never had any science classes. I took geology when I was a business major. So if you need to know Mohs hardness scale, I'm your man. But, or if you need to know how to ship something, FedEx or UPS, whatever, I can find you the quickest, fastest, and cheapest route back then. But so I had to start all over again. So again, the Lord was telling me, you've got to break yourself down and get over what you think and come and follow this path. And so it took me about right at 2 years to just get enough prerequisite things to even be able to go to school. And fortunately was able to get into medical school on my first attempt and start at UT Memphis. And fast forward 4 years, finished there, graduated, came here to do my residency in internal medicine at UT, and finished that in 2013, and then was blessed that a young man out in Halls was deciding to retire. And
I thought you followed Larry Husby. I'm sorry.
Had a very wonderful affinity for some golf and just some other things that wanted to pursue, and I was lucky enough to come and join that practice and be a part of that practice, and fortunate enough to inherit wonderful patients like Jim and folks of that like, right. and so fast forward, so now I'm in my 9th year there. Wow. And things are great. And other personal stuff. So I'm married to my wife, Laura. We've been married 6 years and been together for almost 10. And we have 2 children, Callan and Kate, both with a C, and they're 5 and 3. And they're quite busy. Everybody asks me if we're ready for another one. I'm like, no, we are not, because they know just who to go to when they need something. Daddy, so I'm a sucker. And I always said I'd probably have all girls, so, I'm 2 for 2, so I'd probably end up 3 for 3 and really be in a pickle. So, but that's a little bit about me. Tell me what
okay,
yeah.
tell us a little bit now that you're into this medical practice for 9 years.
This is my 9th year, yes, sir.
I thought it was about 5 or 6. I really did.
Where does the time go? It goes,
Yeah,
just keeps
it
going
does,
faster
but,
and faster, for sure.
I knew immediately, just, it wasn't that he came in and read the Bible and started preaching about Jesus, but I could tell immediately, here's a Christian man, and I'm glad he's caring for me. And so when this opportunity came up, he was actually one of the very first people I thought about. And so tell us, if you will, Shane, how do you see your faith driving you day after day? Does it ever get in your way at all? If you'll talk about that a little bit.
It's a great question, and we can start way back. So I was baptized. I'm Baptist by faith, and so baptized at the age of 10. That's when I came to accept Christ. Always just felt the love of Him and also of the fellow churchgoers throughout my life, and just very fortunate for that. In terms of we'll fast forward to when I started my journey into medical school. I think the first thing I noticed is I was like, this is a lot of stuff that they're hitting me with. What am I going to lean on? Well, what are you going to go to? You're going to go to the Lord with that. And so the first, it's kind of an evolution in school. The first thing I thought about with all the information and the way they'd ask the questions was, okay, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that helps you push through, and that helps you, progress through your studies and realize, okay, there's a better purpose for this. And then you kind of get through medical school, and you're into your residency. And then I would say, in Romans, I think it's Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things that God works for the good of those who love Him in order to fulfill His purpose, according to His purpose. And so you feel that, you're in your training, and you're going through that, and you're doing your residency, and that's when you're really taking care of the patients, and you're the one that's taking care of them. Now you have an attending that oversees you, but if you come in at night and I'm in the ICU, I'm the one that's caring for you, and so you feel called to that. So come the end of your training, you finish that up, and you're feeling pretty confident. You feel maybe a little cocky, and you have to figure out early on, when you really get out in the real world, you got to go back to John and realize, he must increase, so I must decrease. Because if you don't realize that all that he has granted you, it's a joy and a blessing, and it's our purpose to share that with other people, and that he's the one that's helped lead us there, then you can get yourself into some really sticky situations, not just professionally, but personally or anything. And so for me, I think that was the first big lesson when I first got out, because I felt like I'm the hot shot, and really just focusing on God is the one who has granted or endowed, whatever word you want to use, this opportunity to do this, and I have to remember that it's Him first, then everything else falls into place. In terms of how that shows up on a daily basis, I think there's kind of three big categories that come to mind. The first one is you feel His presence in celebration. Now, what does celebration mean? Well, in primary care, we get to see people over and over again, so you get the continuity of care. It's wonderful to get to visit, and you learn about, people's families. You learn about their hopes, their dreams, their fears. So celebration is when I feel Him, because it's everything from a birth of a grandchild or a new child into the family, or the first child, or it's, I have some kids that graduated college or high school, and it's a big moment. Sometimes the first person in their family that's graduated from college. It's, hey, your blood pressure was awful, and we got you on this medicine, and now you don't have terrible headaches and don't feel sick all the time because the medicine's working. You got your diabetes under control. That's wonderful. So we feel Him in celebration. You also feel Him in the uncertain times, and so what does that mean? That means there's times when you may not necessarily know what's wrong with the patient. Now, there's an old saying, and I know Bill and Larry have heard this before. If you just listen to the patient, they will tell you what is wrong with them. You just have to listen to them. But it doesn't mean that they just straight up say, hey, I have pancreatitis. That's not how that works. And so God is with us, because there's been plenty of times with different people that it's just like something tapped me on the shoulder, and I know it's Him. I know it's an angel that just says, hey, did you just hear what that person said? That's important. You need to have them repeat it, or have them pay attention to that and ask something leading from that. And that's that's how we figure stuff out. And so it really is through Him that the knowledge is there. And then I also feel Him in times of, I hate to use the word tragedy, but because when we do pass, we go to a beautiful place that we on earth can't fathom. But it helps me to have my faith, and I can talk to the patients, and we can sit there, and sometimes we just sit there in silence, and they may cry, I may cry, we may just have a moment together, but God, you can feel the presence in the room, and just feel the special opportunity that's there to be with those people, and try to help guide them in any way that the Lord leads us. And so I think that's how I feel Him and see Him at work, in my practice.
Absolutely, and it shows. It shows that you feel that way. I know when Larry retired, I was, of course, disappointed. I really was. He was a good doctor, as we know, and we've been friends since college. We were fraternity brothers, and it really, I had not gone to a doctor for several years. And finally, something happened, and I had to go to a doctor. So he was kind enough to see me. I thought, well, this doctor thing's not that bad. I mean, he he's good. I really like, and I knew he was a Christian. So, have there been days when you've gone in just dreading the day because you knew what might be ahead in terms of some of your patients, not necessarily their personality, although maybe that, but also their health? And how does that make you feel when you
And
go
full
in?
moons are on a cycle. I don't know if you've ever
Pardon
heard
me?
that. Full moons are on a cycle. So yes, we do, as Larry laughs, but we definitely. I will say there's the beauty of our job is that we get to help people. The challenge of our job is, how do you help them? And sometimes I can look at my schedule and I'll say to myself, I don't, we've got their blood pressure doing good, their cholesterol is really good, but they just still don't feel good. And what is it? Why does that happen? And it can be exhausting at times, because none of us want to fail. We don't want to feel like a failure. No one in the world wants to feel that way. And sometimes that's the part that makes it challenging, is you're taught not to fail throughout life. I mean, you want to succeed, and you have to realize that you can help them without adding a medicine or doing a test or whatever. And the exhaustion that comes from trying to figure that through your mind can really weigh on you at times. But when you think about the opportunity to serve, I think that is what helped guides me through, is to just keep in mind, that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I want to serve and I want to help. And when I have those bad days, that's what I focus on. And inevitably someone will come in and they'll have some joyous story of whatever it is, and they'll share something with me, and it'll just click, and it's just that small reminder of this is why we do what we do.
Have you ever felt that in any kind of situation where you felt like you wanted to do something as a physician, but maybe your faith got in the way? And I'm not even sure if that question makes sense, but
I would say, and not to, I don't, our oath, we do our very best, and we want to treat everyone the same, and we don't see color, we don't see religion, we don't see money, we don't see any of those things. I will say sometimes there have been times with some premarital pregnancy things that we've had to have some serious conversations, and those are challenging, because I want them to know that they are loved, and that people are supportive. It's hard because you don't necessarily agree with what has happened in that scenario, but again, you think back to, but my purpose to be here is to try to reassure them and help them. So it does get challenging sometimes with those sorts of things, abortion, things of that nature. But it's against kind of those, you just get that little tap on the shoulder that says, just be calm, be still, be patient, let them know that they are loved, and it will all be okay. It will all be okay.
That's great. So when have you felt like, wow, I did what I did today because God led me to do it, and you feel like God is smiling, as you may also be smiling?
I think that is a fabulous question. I think it's when kind of that, what we were talking a little bit before, somebody comes in and you can just tell something's not right. And I always think of this one gentleman. He's 91 years old, wonderful guy. Jim is actually his name too. You're not.
But it's not me.
He's not 91. No,
I'm real close.
And he came in and he was like, well, my stomach was upset, but I'm okay. And I'm just looking at him and I'm like, color's okay until I start getting closer to him, because there's a decent distance in the office, and I get to him and his eyes are yellow. I'm like, well, your eyes aren't supposed to be yellow. I'm not a genius, but that doesn't seem good. And I'm like, yeah, you're not okay. But the only reason I got up is because it was just that voice, because I didn't even wait for him to finish. Like, I just got up, and it was like something was just pushing, and he ended up, he had a stone that was blocked in his biliary tract, which is the tubing from the gallbladder and the pancreas that comes together. He ended up having to have emergency surgery, so he had, he had a significant problem there. And you feel good at that day because you're like, okay, I listened to you, Lord. You just said, get up and go, and he needs to go to the hospital right now. And so I think, and there's lots of moments like that. And I think that's when, at the end of the day, you're like, okay, that was such a blessing because we were able to help this person in that way. I also get that sense of pride when you do have someone who comes in with they've had an unexpected loss, or they just, with particularly in the COVID season, they just can't seem to get out of what I call the waves just keep crashing down on them. They just keep getting beat down, and you're trying to stand up in the ocean. It just keeps hitting you. Sometimes just giving your time to those people, like and I get behind. Most doctors get behind, but I get real behind. So Jim's always very gracious to be forgiven with that. But those are moments too when you feel it, because it's okay. We're meant to be here, and I'm meant to just sit here with you and talk, and the words come and they come from Him, and that's very comforting, and it gives you a lot of joy just to do that. Even though it's stressful, and even though now I'm 45 minutes behind, but that was important.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesus was not a pastor, so I can't claim that I'm in the same profession that Jesus was, so to speak. Jesus was a teacher, but He was also a physician. Have you ever thought about that correlation there, that similarity, that in a certain way you're following in His footsteps?
Yes, the easy answer is yes, and it's definitely a challenging answer, because obviously you can never live up to those shoes.
And I know it's a different kind of physician. So.
Right, but no, it is such a great foundation for the caring and the care that He provided to others, and the miracles and the healing that He was able to provide, and it's just special to feel led to be a part of that on a obviously not the same transcendent level, but to still be a part of that. It is a special thing.
Yeah.
It is definitely a special thing.
Right. Change the subject just a little bit. These days, most everyone has access to the internet, television. Oh, I've got the symptom. Google. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. I've got this. I've got that. Judy knows I've done that before. And
you've been reading WebMD again, haven't you?
Yeah. She always says WebMD's the best one.
Yeah, I see your face. It's not the truth. It's not the truth. I know Judy. That's not right.
And this is more than everyone wants to know probably, but you may remember when I was diagnosed with a gallbladder problem. I whined. You may not want to admit it, but I did. I whined because I probably was pretty sure that my time on earth was limited.
And I do remember that, and you there, if I may speak to him about it.
You may say anything you want to.
And we were in room 5, which is the small room now. They did some remodel area, and so it's about half the size.
How can I get out of here?
About half the size, and it was a little hot in that room. There was definitely, except he was pale as a ghost, and so that was a very. And that's one of those moments where you thought you were dying, which again, that's one of those, hey, you need to listen, because they really are hurting that much, feeling that bad, something's going on. And that's why we sent you for the test right then. We're like, you got to go and get this done.
You got to get this test done right now.
Yes. No, I remember that very vividly.
You handled it very well.
I do.
And I remember soon after that, I was driving down the road into where we used to live, subdivision, and it occurred to me, worry is of the devil. And I still believe that. I know Judy's going to laugh, but I don't worry as much as I used to. I really don't. And part of it is because of you. It really is. I think you helped me to see that usually there's a way to deal with things, and you were very kind and patient and compassionate and all the things a doctor should be. And Larry was when I encountered the situation that drove me to him. But here I am now, I'm still here. Maybe not tomorrow. I don't know. This shoulder may kill me yet. I don't know. But anyway, with the internet, I don't know how I got on that. With the internet and Googling and all that, so patients oftentimes, I'm sure, will come in and say, I've got this disease. I want you to take care of it. How do you handle that?
The first thing you do is you listen to your patient. You listen, even if you think they're off, and I don't mean that in the sense of being mentally off. I just mean that's not what's more than likely being the problem. Let them describe it to you. Let them talk to you. Let them. I mean, people even bring me articles. They'll bring me the printed articles, and you take it. And I do. I read it. I do. I really do. And that comes from a lot of mentoring. I had some really good mentors going through school, and they're like, the number one thing is they just want to be heard. They want to feel like you're trying to listen. I mean, you see these surveys on TV or the internet and things like that. The number one thing that people get upset about is my doctor didn't listen to me. The second thing is I can't get to my doctor. I don't have access. So that's another stress. We could talk for 30 minutes about that. But when folks come in, the first thing you want to do is you listen. You listen, and you be still and just listen to what they have to say, and then I'll usually try to start asking them just different questions to see if it'll, if it's going to direct it, and sometimes I'll even say, I know you've read a lot about this, you've done a lot of research. You've thought about what's going on in your story of everything that's happening in your mind. Can you just share it all with me, because I can't read your mind. I just need to know what all is going on, and we can just establish that discussion, and you'll start drawing out what's going on, and it's not uncommon. People are right, because common things being common, that's usually what's going on. And when it's not, that's okay, because they say, well, gosh, I hadn't thought about that. And I'm like, that's okay, because that's why I have a job. If otherwise you wouldn't need me. You don't need me here. And so that's I think that's one of the challenging things is just to keep that patience, to keep the patience and use the wisdom that the Lord has endowed upon us, to not just figure out what's wrong, but direct it to what you think is going on, and see if the road really will go that way. Sometimes it doesn't, and then you have to ask some different things and say, okay, well, I was thinking about this too, and just try to direct it it's kind of the art. We have the science of medicine, but that's kind of the art of medicine, is to listen and try to direct it to figure out what's going on.
You mentioned the science of medicine. I think a doctor is definitely a scientist. You have to be.
Yes. I would say yes.
And you're also a person of faith. Do these two ever collide for you? How do you, as a scientist, work with you as a man of faith? That's
a great century-old question. I don't know, and I don't think we're good at. I'll give you my opinion. I don't think we'll be able to solve it tonight.
Shoot.
So when that happens, the first thing is you got to realize without Him we're nothing, and there's understanding that He is able to have that I can't, as a mortal, I can't come close to. I think it is those moments when you are uncertain, that it's just those reminders of you can't know everything. I'm a scientist, and you can apply the scientific method and try to, okay, here's what I think is going on. Let's test it, whether it's questions or a lab test or whatever, and see if we can get there. But I think the biggest thing is to think back, if I wouldn't have this knowledge if He hadn't given it to us, and I think that's where just keeping Him at the forefront, it really is what keeps me grounded and understand, yes, there is science, but how do we have science? How do we figure all this stuff out? Well, who gave us that knowledge? Well, He did. Now that's not, so he allowed somebody to figure out how to build the table. Now you gotta be careful with that, because He's not in the table, because then you're into some false idol type things and things like that. But he gives us the knowledge, and I think that is, as with being faith, having the faith, that's the key. Is I don't have any of this unless He kind of allows it to be, and I think that's what grounds me back to it. Because and historically, thinking back, I mean, even the name, it's Dr. Mirabilis, but I can't think of it. It was one of the Franciscan friars, was actually one of the founders of the scientific method. So there are faith-based, intertwinement there going centuries back where these things are pretty evident. And I think if you think historically back to those things, it reminds you.
And of course, certainly don't want to get political here, but the last several months, since the pandemic began, we keep hearing faith over fear, faith over fear. I'm not real sure what that means. I know what it means for some people. What does that mean for you? I mean, I don't even know the question I'm asking, but talk about faith over fear for you, if you will.
I think for me, and this is just Shane. This isn't Dr. Kelley. For me, it is understanding that Michael Thomas, the pastor of the church I attend, Fellowship North. I think there were three. He gave a talk once, and it was three things. And he said, you have to, your faith over fear is, so you got to remember, God is sovereign, God is good, but you also have to remember it's His will, not our will. And so I think, in this world, people feel that if you want to be vaccinated or don't want to be vaccinated, well, that either way, it's a problem. And that's actually a fear, because we don't know as much about a shot because it's new. There's fear of, well, you didn't get it. Are you going to make me sick? And then I'm going to end up on a ventilator and die. And it's all this division. So I think where you have to have the faith is, but God is always good. Now, what good means to us may not be what good is in this situation, and I think that's what it is for me. Is remembering He is good, no matter what's going on. No matter if we're talking about COVID, or we're talking about chickenpox, or we're talking about the flu or whatever. He is good. He is for us. But His will is what is to be done, not what I want or you want or anyone else wants. And I think that's where the faith part overcomes the fear, because He is good.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Wow. Have you ever had a patient during the pandemic to, I won't say attack, that's I hope no one's attacked you. Even
I work out, so no. I'm still spry enough, spry enough.
He goes,
I can't move the next day, but
you unlock the gym, don't you? Didn't you say you go in and unlock the gym?
I go about 5. Yeah, I go pretty early.
And I'm just turning over the.
It's really just
time.
to stay in shape for my kids. It's really what it is. They'll run me to death if I don't try to stay physically active.
As T.C. Willis said, and most of you remember T.C. He said something about 5 o'clock. What he said something about 5 o'clock one morning. He looked at me and said, "And you're still slobbering on your pillow," and that is true.
Truth.
So when I wake up in the morning at 7:30, 8:30, I think, oh, Dr. Kelley's already been to the gym and he's seen 3 patients. Well, where was I going with that? Perhaps you can help me with that problem.
Absolutely. Yes, we can talk about that later.
How did I?
Being
attacked, yeah. Patients who've been unhappy with and if you don't mind my saying this, I think you've been in favor of the vaccine since it became a reality.
Yes.
And you were very helpful to me and how I could get one. But have you had patients really to criticize you or attack you for it?
Yes, I've and there's a couple of patients that do come to mind on that, and what we talk about is kind of earlier the knowledge is given through us from the Lord, and so I trust that the science part, it is His will. I don't think this is the devil trying to put something inside of us to hurt us, because if you look at from the science standpoint how it actually works, the science part makes sense. Now the fear comes when you have, and again, not to be too political, but you get some political party things in there, and you could even make that statement either way, where it just starts creating distrust, and people don't want to do that. And yes, I've had a couple of pretty, and they're good people, good hardworking people. They provide for their families. They go to church. They do, they try to do all the right things, but they are convinced that this is going to turn them into a reptile, or some things like that. And I try. They're as red faced as
Really?
as the nice lady's sweater right there. And the first thing you do is you just take a step back and say, number one, I'm not trying to force you to do anything. That's not I'm just a human. I'm a dude, from Jeff County. That is not, I got no authority over you, but I want you to get it because I believe in it, and I believe the reason that we have this is because the Lord did want to try to protect us in some way, and He is with us, and so I think this is important. And then it kind of usually will morph into more of the political aspect of things. Right. And I say, okay, throw the political part out of it, and let's talk about the science of it. We've been looking at this for decades. It's not something new. The messenger RNA, the only reason we did it this way is because to get a shot that's traditionally like the flu, it takes a long time. It doesn't just happen in a couple months. You can't do that. You have to attenuate it or heat it up and kill it, and then you have to be able to stabilize it in a shot. That's why the flu shot is like a year in the making kind of deal. And they're working on that now, and it is something that's going to be here for COVID, just like the flu. But we try to take it back to that, and they don't necessarily change their minds, so to speak, but it does help them to feel like, okay, he listened to me. Okay. He heard me out. He didn't just jump to, well, you're an awful person because you don't want to do this. No, they're not. They're good people. It's not. It's truly, it's nothing personal against me. They don't really have it in for me, but they kind of want to challenge the doctor. And every now and then that happens. You get somebody that comes in, they kind of want to challenge the doc and just see, what do you know, what do you don't know? I've read this, and I think the first thing is staying calm and just listening to them, and we can usually work through it. And again, I think the reassurance of, my job is not to force you to do anything. My job is to try to be as educated as I can about whatever the situation is, and give you options of what to do. And if you don't want to do it, it's okay. I'm not gonna call you a horrible person and not try to continue to help take care of you or anything like that. Right. So that usually diffuses it when you can kind of get to that level and say, listen, I'm not trying to wrestle you down and put one in your arm. And that has, like I said, there's been a couple people, and that actually did diffuse it, just listening to them, and wow. Just they understood that, the purpose is we have this knowledge, we put this together. If you don't want to do it, it's still free will. So,
as you talk now, we've been together here now about 40 minutes, I see consistency across the board of listening. And I think that's a valuable lesson for all of us, whatever our profession is or has been, or wherever we are in life today, if we will just listen to other people. But so often, I even am having a hard time listening because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. So you've reminded us of a valuable lesson. Let me go back to one more thing. We want to have time for questions from these good folks. I was one who, from the time of high school on, knew what I wanted to do. And so there was some question in high school. But then once I decided to go this course, I thought, well, is God really calling me? Sometimes even still I feel like I had to talk God into letting me do this, Come on, God, I think I can do it. Let me try it. So God was kind enough to let me do that. So I went from high school to Tennessee Wesleyan College, majored in religion, went on to seminary, and had my first appointment as a pastor when I was 24 years old. But I admire people like you, and there are many, who enter a profession and suddenly realize that's not where you need to be. And you have the courage to make that change because you know that's where God is leading you. So I admire that.
Well, thank you. If you'd been there when it was all going down, it'd been like you in room 5 with me that day. It was there.
Tell me, do you really?
There were some white knuckled moments. Well, I remember you vividly. Are you kidding me? No, but when, literally. I mean, when I was going through that, it was I could just feel him working on me, saying you in the wrong thing, son. You got to get out of this. But at the same time, you're done with school. I'd never been done with school before, and those, of course, that was right before the big crash of everything a few years later with, the real estate market and the economy and things in 2008. And so, I mean, I might have gotten fired. You never know. But I was nice and safe in medical school then. But it really was a scary time because you had money. You didn't have to worry about school. Just all those things. But again, the whole thing with my mom being at that church in Sterling Heights, and just again, somebody every time they'd come up and just say, oh, it's not really what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah. It's not really what you're supposed to be doing. And then I had a conversation actually with Fred Hurst, who's one of my partners now, and I had come back for the holidays, and Fred and I were just sitting there chit chatting. So I just stopped by to say hey, just randomly, and he goes, all right then, well, you give me a call when you're ready to come back and be a primary care physician. And it was just one of those subtle things, Fred, as you know, when Fred's done talking to you, Fred just kind of walks away from you, and it's like, conversation's over, thank you, glad for that. And that always struck too, because it was like, again, that's another situation. Why did that just happen? Well, that was, again, the pulling me where I was supposed to be. But it was definitely nervous. It was definitely a nerve-wracking time.
So often we see God in retrospect rather than at the moment.
Absolutely.
One more question before we turn. What do you really remember? It was room 5?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm not, because we helped you. Thank goodness, right? We wouldn't be able to have this talk right now if we hadn't, right?
So what did you say to your sweet wife when you went home that night? I had this crazy passion. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're going to get on.
No, we don't. We can't talk about it.
I know.
Can't talk about it. She just gives me a look when I have that look of it was a busy day, and she's like, go play with your kids. No.
Yeah, go play with your kids.
Go have fun.
Okay, questions, folks. I'm sure you have some, Jim. Of course, and they're always good ones.
Is there collegiality among physicians? My older brother was a physician, and he spent hours studying his medical journals when he wasn't treating patients, but did he ever talk to others? I mean, you have a case where you say to another doctor, this guy Whedbee, I'm having trouble with him. What do you recommend? I mean, do you talk to each other?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. So, from the time you start school, when I went through school, that was one of the things they encouraged was the collegiality, trying to. Don't be afraid to talk to your fellow student physicians, to your fellow physicians, because we cannot know everything. It is impossible. We'd like to think that we do. My partners and I now, we converse every day about somebody in some way, and it's not even necessarily always just a patient, but just the general flow of medicine now, kind of the changes in things and the way that it's being approached, in terms of different methodologies and some of the frustrations politically that go on right now. So we definitely do, and I feel fortunate in my practice now that we are able to do that now. And it's hard because, like yesterday, I was talking to two of my fellow physicians, and we were talking about some of the office dynamic things, and then it morphed into talking about a couple patients that we'd seen that day. And next thing you knew, we'd been talking to each other for like an hour. Well, I hadn't gotten any of my charting done. But you love it so much to be able to have that. But the time sacrifice, that's the other thing that gets sticky, because you still want to be able to go home. The days of and Larry came up in this, and Bill obviously too. I mean, you were there before the sun came up, and you were there long after the sun went down. It's a little bit different setup now. We try to, I think the the demands are such that we do have a little more free time to be able to get home to our families and things, but you still want that opportunity to talk and we share in the joy, and we commiserate when there's the rough times and all those things. So yes, there that does still exist, and at least at my side, I do think we do that. And my buddies from school, every now and then we'll text each other about something random that's going on, a patient or whatever, and so it still exists. It does.
Good question. Anyone else?
Make a comment.
Okay. Please.
I'm in a unique situation. 50 years ago, I finished training and I was looking for a place to practice. And I went to Morristown, I went to Alcoa, and I went to a place called Paul's Crossroads. He didn't have it then.
I have that shirt though. I have that shirt. I do.
It had Bill and Nancy Cloud. And once I met them, I knew where I was going to practice.
Wow.
That's why I had 40 years of practice, and I'm looking for a replacement. I'm ashamed, and it's given an answer to me, this is the right time for you to step aside. And I feel very blessed
Thank you.
on both ends of my career because of you guys.
When I met Larry, if I may, sorry.
Sure,
When I met Larry, because we came to the office, and actually we saw some folks together. If you remember that, we got to see some folks together, and that was really awesome. That same Sunday, preacher was talking, and it was really, where are you going to put your time? And I was really going back and forth between, did I want to just do hospital medicine, or did I want to do primary care? And I had this meeting set up already, and it was just like that just spoke to me in that moment. And then when I met Larry and we had that time together, it just made sense, and I think it was the next week even, and we had to do a little negotiation, of course. But I signed my contract literally right after that.
Wow.
So, and it was so I felt the same. Again, we're where we're supposed to be.
And I will also add, Larry was very assuring and reassuring to me that I would be in good hands if I chose to stay.
That was the $100 bills did that. The $100. I'm teasing. Yes, sir, that was the thing.
Okay, other questions?
Yes, Miss.
How do you plan to help parents and grandparents through the vaccination of children and grandchildren?
That's a great question, and it's a little more challenging for me. I don't see kiddos. Just internist, I basically will see anybody, college age and up, so it's a little bit different scenario. But having parents that have young children, FDA just recently for age 5 to 11, I'm assuming that's kind of what you're touching on, has approved the Pfizer version for that age group. I think the biggest thing for parents is to sit there and let them ask me the questions, not me ask them the questions, and try to answer, because you hear all kinds of things from, well, what's it going to do 10 years from now? Because we don't necessarily know, and one of the questions that comes up a lot is there's the concerns about infertility being a big concern, and that's something that is that's a very serious subject, because we all dream I dream of my girls meeting the right person when they're 45, and
Sure.
perhaps settling down, and no, it ain't gonna happen. They love boys now, and it's awful. But having that moment where your son or your daughter is meets the love of their life and gets to share in that joy and that bond and start their families, and then does this mess that up? Well, what we know from the years of this is that sort of stuff doesn't happen. Now, I'm also not in control, and 10 years down the line, will they find something? Maybe, but I don't. I think the biggest thing now is we have this. I do think it's a God thing and not a devil thing, and this is what's helping us to navigate our way through this. And from all that I have read, and this is 2 years worth of reading, it doesn't look like those concerns for side effects, those things exist. And so trying to reassure them of that, and reassuring them too that doing this does help protect them if they were to get sick. I think that's one of the biggest things, is not just preventing illness, because there's still a chance with the variants and things of people getting sick with it still. But what we do see if you've had your vaccine, the likelihood of being hospitalized, the likelihood of being, that critically ill state of health is dramatically reduced. And I think, and that is true. That is definitely something. I'm still friends with several ICU physicians at UT, and that's one of the biggest things when I talk to them. They say, no, that's real. That's not some political, mumbo jumbo that's out there. That's real stuff. And there's some pretty cynical ICU guys out there, and I love them to death because I can get the straight answer. And so I think, relying on that, the collegiality, as you were saying, where we talk about, so, I've talked to my other friends that see this, and this is what's happening. And I think it's listening first, kind of the common theme here, and letting them ask me, and just giving that time of whatever it is, and whatever question it is, trying to reassure and say, here is where we are, and my faith leads me that this is the right thing that we need to be doing.
Great. Others? Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
When somebody, I'm going to invite you to come see me Methodist, because we've got two good doctors back here that every time somebody gets sick, they jump up out of the congregation and so we need somebody.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We don't want Larry to blow out a knee. That would be really bad. That would mess up your golf game. I got you.
Jumping up.
kind of just a careful slide to the occasion. Yes.
I always thought
Thank you
those
so much.
people
Thank
had
you
been
so much.
slain in the spirit when they passed out when I was preaching, but found out later that wasn't the case. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
wonderful.
yes.
That's wonderful. But thank you so much. I appreciate that.
But yeah, sure, we'd welcome him and his family.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jerry, you always have a question.
I was going to let him know that you were considering Dr. Mark Cloud, and he closed his practice that week.
But what? I'm sorry.
You were considering Dr. Mark Cloud for your physician, and he closed his practice that week.
Word got out.
He did recently retire, actually. He honestly did.
Mark Cloud did?
He did. He recently retired. Yeah.
I did not know that.
He looks fantastic. I saw him the other day. He had sweatpants on, T-shirt. Looked like $1 million. He's looking good, nice and relaxed. I was like, man, that's some good stuff, Mark. I'm not ready for that though.
No,
Long time in the
Anything else?
How are you on night calls, Doctor?
So that's a great question. So we have a system now where we only get called with lab stuff at night. Before we got called about anything, and that could be somebody who's just got intractable nausea, vomiting, and is like, listen, I'm really sorry, you're gonna have to go to the ER right now because you're throwing up, you're puking your guts out. This doesn't sound good, or I'm having chest pains radiating down my arm. I feel nauseated. I don't know why you called me. You need to go. To, I once had a call at 1 a.m. from this dear, sweet, young new mother, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. She starts talking about how she dropped a can of green beans on her child's foot, and it goes on about how the poor girl screaming in pain and upset, and she's not wanting to walk on it, and going through the different things, and I'm asking questions, and I'm like, well, what's she doing right now? And this sweet voice over on the other side of the phone said, well, she's asleep. And I said, thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to talk with her and help her. And she was very appreciative. I did. I said a little prayer right there and said, I'm so glad that I didn't lose my mind, because it was 1 a.m. and it had woken me from sleep. But now with our call system, they keep making things easier. Larry, you should have stayed in, man. They keep making it easier. So, I know. Now in my residency, we would get some crazy calls and be up all night, and that was some fun stuff. You learn a lot, honestly, in those moments, really and truly. It's those late nights and those odd things that happens where you learn the most. So it's one of those, if you keep your faith, think about it, it's actually a blessing when that stuff is happening, even though it doesn't seem like it in the time sometimes.
Well, Dr. Kelley, I appreciate you even more
Thank you,
as a
Jim.
result of this evening.
Thank you so much.
Really do.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Let's close with a prayer, if we could. Lord God, we thank you for this day, for the beauty of your creation that we see all around us, as we see evidence of your handiwork, as we see your handiwork through Shane Kelley, and know, Lord, that you have called him to this place in his life and in the life of this community, that we might be better and more ready and able to serve you. Thank you for his words tonight, for his patience, for his skills, and for his love for you, and for the love of each person here tonight for you. Guide us and strengthen us in all that we do, that each day we can live for you in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. And I want to thank Jerry Mitchell for filling in so capably last week. If you'd been lucky, you could have had him for an interviewer, but you got stuck with me. So thank you all.